Hey guys, welcome back to Ace Recaps. Today I'm going to be explaining a 2017 Korean mystery thriller film titled, Forgotten. The movie starts off as we watch the protagonist of the film, Jin-seok, a 21-year-old student, wake up from a nightmare. The boy is moving to a new home with his father, mother and older brother Yoo-seok. Everybody in the family looks up to Yoo as he's a hard-working overachiever who's done great things for the family. Jin takes psychiatric pills on a daily basis, to help him deal with his mental issues. He soon starts having strange nightmares in the new home and hears suspicious noises coming from a mysterious room in the new house that he is forbidden to enter. One night after school, Jin witnesses his beloved brother being kidnapped by a gang of men inside a black van. He tries to help but he's too far away, so he memorizes the number plate, rushes home and passes out. The investigators show up to the house, but tell the family that the number plate seen by Jin does not exist. He tries his best to convince the officers that he wasn't hallucinating, but all in vain. The case goes blank in a few days as there were no leads for them to work on. This seems suspicious as though they were already in on it. Jin isn't able to sleep for days and his nightmares get worse after the incident. 19 days go by and one morning Yoo returns home having no recollection of what happened. The family is thrilled to have their son back and everything soon goes back to normal until Jin begins to observe strange behaviors from his brother. His brother limps with a different leg than before the kidnapping, and goes out in the middle of the night, denying it the day after. One night, Jin falls asleep while studying and his older brother walks up to him in a mean way and starts pressing on the pencil lead until it's about to prick him in the eye and walks out of the house. He was just acting as though he'd fallen asleep and starts following his brother due to his abnormal behavior. He discovers that his brother is not really limping at all. He continues to follow him using a taxi, and sneaks behind him as he walks through a creepy alley and into a building. There he notices that the investigators who were in his house actually work for his brother. The gang notice him and start running after the innocent boy. He tries his best to evade the men but in vain as he is eventually caught and drugged. The next morning, he suddenly wakes up where he pretended to fall asleep. He freaks out and accuses Yoo for being an imposter. They fight it out and his brother convinces him that all he saw was a hallucination due to the fact that he had skipped his psychiatric pill the previous day. Still not convinced with whatever happened, he looks for evidence in the room to support his theory. He finds the lead that was used to almost prick his eye and Jin realizes he wasn't wrong after all. He explains everything to his mother, but is still not convinced. A few hours later, he overhears her speaking to the other family members and realizes that everyone is in on it. Jin figures out that he is being controlled by three individuals who pretend to be his family but are not. To escape from them, he climbs out his window in the rain but is cornered by his father and brother. He manages to make a run for it and is tackled by his brother but ultimately comes across a police car. He explains everything to them and this is where the movie takes a dark turn. The police point out that the things Jin says don't make sense, he can't be 21, and the year is not 1997 as he always thought. Jin observes the calendar hanging in the office, and figures out that it's 2017 and Jin is really 41 years old. Distraught and confused, Jin decides to go home and let the individuals who pretend to be his family explain what's happening. When he arrives he finds the door to the mysterious room open. He walks in and witnesses a simulated murder scene, with fake blood and music coming out of the radio. He can't seem to understand what's going on until his fake brother appears, tells him how their plan failed and begins to explain to Jin what really happened. We are in the year 2017, a few months ago before the incident. Jin has lived the last few days under the effect of a powerful regressive hypnosis and psychotropic pills. He believed he was living in the year 1997 with his family, but the truth is that the three are part of the staging, and the father is the hypnotist. The reason for all this is revealed soon after. 20 years earlier in 1997, Jin had unalived a mother and her daughter in that house, leaving only a small child alive. The culprit was never found by the police and the survivors of the crime, in an attempt to find justice, had hired private investigators with a criminal background to uncover the truth. The fake brother is the one in charge of this mission and manages to find him. They torture him for days and days, but there is a big problem: Jin has no memory of what he did to the poor family. The events were so traumatic that he removed them from his conscious memory, and not even the hypnotist was able to recover it from his subconscious mind. They then come up with a plan to bring Jin back to the year 1997 through hypnosis, making him live again the last moments of his happy life before the traumatic events he has no memory of. The purpose of all of this is to force him to remember what he did, so that the family can take revenge on him by unaliving him after he becomes aware of whatever he did. Use kidnapping is the event that disrupts the plan. It was not a kidnapping, but a police arrest. The fake brother had to spend 19 days in prison for some petty crime, and Jin was not supposed to find out about this. Unfortunately, he witnesses the arrest, which interferes in the whole plan as it happened right during the murder timeline. The problem is that many days have passed and the effects of hypnosis on Jin are starting to lose their effectiveness. For this reason, Jin begins to realize the oddities that surround him, while at the beginning, the hypnosis that controlled him was still too strong for him to notice any of this. But the noises he heard and the doubts he had were all real and well-founded. The room he wasn't allowed in was the place that the team was setting up the murder scene. Jin doesn't fully accept this explanation as he believes he has never unalived anyone since he's not capable of such a thing. He jumps out of the moving car and the two have a car accident. Jin wakes up in a hospital bed, with his fake brother next to him, ready to unalive him with poison. But suddenly we discover that Jin's memory has returned, and we relive it as it really happened. 1997 was in fact the last year of happiness for Jin. We see him again in the car with his family, father, mother and older brother. They are actually different people from those he has lived with in the last few days. Jin sleeps with his shoulder resting on his mother. This is the exact moment the film begins, where the hypnotic staging takes place. In the sequence of real events of 20 years earlier, the family meets with a serious accident during that very road trip. His parents pass away and the older brother ends up in the hospital in a critical condition, requiring expensive surgery. Jin remains alone and poor in this desperate situation. He tries to find work, but in vain due to the economic crisis. One day, he receives a particular proposal from his doctor. A mysterious man offers him the money he needs. In exchange, Jin has to unalive a woman. Not seeing an alternative, Jin is forced to accept the offer. He receives an address, which actually coincides with the house where he lived in the past few days, in order to relive that moment. He enters that house late one night, changes his mind and tries to leave. But unfortunately something goes wrong and the older daughter starts screaming in fear. Jin is terrified of what may unfold if he's caught. He chases her up the stairs and unintentionally unalives her. The mother of the girl enters the room and in a desperate need to not get caught, Jin ends up unaliving her too. He then deceives the small child who had just woken up, telling him that his family will be back at any moment and leaves the apartment, leaving the child alive. The next day he meets the man who hired him for the murder. He is the father of that family and the doctor who takes care of Jin's older brother. He wanted his wife to be unalived in an accident to collect the insurance money, but he has discovered that his daughter who he loved very much was also murdered in the terrible outcome, and now he is furious with Jin. They both blame each other and a fight breaks loose. Jin tries to save his life, but the doctor falls to his death. Terrified for unaliving 3 people, Jin returns home. From that moment begins the process in which he will unconsciously remove everything that has happened, completely forgetting about it in order to live in peace with his own conscience. We are now back in the hospital room. Jin has a full memory of how things really went down. The boy in front of him, who still wants to know the truth, reveals that he is in fact the surviving child who's all grown up now. He grew up all alone without his family and had a very rough life, causing him to join the mafia. This is why he wanted to exact revenge on the person who ended his family. But soon he realizes that Jin did not act on his will. He therefore understands that it was his father who pushed him to do it. Despite this, Jin denies the fact, to avoid him dwelling on the past any more than he already has. With this awareness, he decides to spare Jin, leaves the room and throws himself out of the window. Since his life now no longer has a purpose, revenge against those who exterminated his family would be useless, he no longer has a reason to live. Jin indeed wanted to avoid this, but he wasn't successful at convincing him that he was the only culprit. In the end, Jin also does the unthinkable with the poison that remained on his bed. Now that he remembers everything he did, life is too difficult for him to continue living. The only thing that kept him alive all those years was the loss of memory from the horrible things he had to make himself do. The final scene shows Jin as a young man again in 1997, before setting off on his journey to his new home. The colors are bright and gaudy. That is the last moment of happiness in his life. A child approaches and interacts with him in silence, then returns to his family. Here we see the faces of the united family, the doctor who will take care of his brother in the months to come, the mother and daughter who will soon be no more. In that last moment of happiness, Jin was in harmony with the world and with the individuals whose existence he will destroy in a few months. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Have a great day.